This episode of SuccessKast is sponsored by Peak Talent Capital Solutions. Peak is a revolutionary alternative to the traditional staffing model. Ingenuity, intelligence, and keen marketplace insight drives talent management solutions that make a dynamic difference for partner organizations. From entry level to executive level and every role in between, Peak is illuminating a path forward and meeting the future of work head on. For more information, please visit their website at peaktcs.com.
The views, information, or opinions expressed on SuccessKast are solely those of Michael R. Frazier and the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of our sponsors or their employees.
Welcome to SuccessKast. I'm your host, Mike Frazier. Today we're going to delve a little bit into resilience, or the lack thereof. It's a pretty good bet that you've dealt with your fair share of uncertainty and disruption. I certainly know I have. Or maybe, like so many others, you're beyond exhausted by the stress associated with the fear contagion we've been navigating. We entered 2020 without a clue that the new year would confront the world with its first global pandemic in more than a century. It's not an understatement to say that our lives have been radically altered in one way or another. The resulting illness, loss, grief, isolation, uncertainty, unemployment, business closures, and a constant drumbeat of bad and worse news has taken a tremendous toll on people's mental health and well being, resulting in rising rates of depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and extreme cases, suicide. The pandemic has pushed us to our limits, but some were prepared, able to draw upon their reserves of resilience to push back, pick themselves up by the bootstraps, and keep moving forward. Maybe that's not your experience. Maybe you've struggled to remain resilient. Well, that's exactly why I chose to start this podcast off with resiliency and anti fragility. And in this episode, or part one, we will focus on resilience, or the ability to rise like the proverbial phoenix from the fire. To quote Wikipedia, psychological resilience is the ability to mentally or emotionally cope with a crisis or to return to pre-crisis status quickly. Resilience exists when the person uses mental processes and behaviors in promoting personal assets and protecting self from the potential negative effects of stressors. I'll almost simplify that by applying positive psychology's definition to the subject. Resilience refers to your ability to cope with whatever life throws at you. Some people are knocked down by challenges, but they overcome crisis via resiliency, often described as bouncing back to a normal state of functioning. Resilience is the ability to rise again after we fall, and we will fall. Author Brené Brown claims that if we are brave enough, often enough, we will fall. And I'd say fail there too. The need to be building resilience in times of uncertainty is more necessary today than ever before. Resilience and bravery actually go hand in hand. One of my favorite examples is the man in the arena. On April 23, 1910, former President Theodore Roosevelt gave what would become one of the most widely quoted speeches of his career, or any other leader's career for that matter. Called Citizenship in a Republic, the speech contained an inspirational and impassioned message which drew great applause and praise. Among many, this speech would become known as the man in the arena. And it goes like this: it is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. The man in the arena is life and career as we will, at one point or another, experience it. Successful lives and careers require courage, skill, and tenacity, and I'm going to add action. Action as opposed to sitting on the sidelines and watching, which more often than not causes failure or defeat. Failure is defined as a lack of success. Defeat is defined as an unsuccessful ending to a struggle or contest. But from either, we have three options: do nothing and remain down or defeated. We can be resilient and bounce back to our former state, or we can grow to new dimensions for it. Today, we are confronted with epic levels of uncertainty and disruption that doesn't sit well in our gray matter. Humans like to know what's going on, what might happen, and what the long term effects on our lives might be. Our brains are wired for predicting the future. Our very perception of the world is generated by combining memories of our past with information from our senses to make an educated guess about what is about to happen. Radical uncertainty is a test of our resilience. And baby, we're in the midst of the perfect storm of radical uncertainty. It also makes us very uncomfortable. In fact, we find uncertainty so unsettling that people would rather know they are going to receive an electric shock than wait for the possibility of them. This was highlighted when researchers at University College in London recruited people to play a computer game where snakes were hidden behind certain rocks. Each time participants found a snake, they got a small electric shock. I can't help but almost laugh through this. Who in the heck would sign up for this? The computer measured uncertainty using the players' guesses and their stress response based on how much they sweated and their pupil size. The result: people were more stressed if they were uncertain whether a shock was coming than if they knew they were definitely going to get zapped. That's crazy. Right there. I wonder who signed up for that one, actually. For many years prior to the pandemic, people were struggling with resilience. This has been going on for years. In fact, the subject came up continuously with our younger generations as they entered the workforce. More specifically, it was and remains to be increasingly seen as a lacking trait or a deficit in far too many people. In October 2021, the World Economic Forum listed resilience, stress tolerance, and flexibility in its top 10 skills necessary for the future of work. Inside that top 10, resilience, stress tolerance, and flexibility are the attributes that will have the most impact on reskilling or upskilling, in my opinion, the successful application and attainment of the other skills listed in that top 10. In the future of work, our ability to bounce back from difficulty will be paramount to remaining relevant. Beyond the stereotypes surrounding millennials and their Gen Z siblings, studies suggest a lack of resilience is turning what were once seen as normal challenges of growing up and thriving into an almost insurmountable obstacle. Others may point to the infantilization of our culture. Shamefully and quite purposefully, children and young adults continue to be infantilized by parents, social institutions, and technological devices. Then we add a whole other dynamic to this mix. We run these young adults through a blender of pandemic uncertainty, ambiguity, and emotional contagion. And we wonder that we now find ourselves mired in a mental health crisis of epic proportions. It seems we want to be reactive to this issue rather than proactive. And now we may just be paying the ultimate price for decades of poor stewardship, which has created woeful levels of resilience. Shielding our youth from negative consequences in their teens, or helicopter parenting around most life obstacles, allowing overconfidence to grow due to a lack of challenge, and little to no exposure to one of life's greatest teachers, failure. We had a pre-existing condition. That pre-existing condition has been amplified by this pandemic. We're in a constant state of flux. We will need resiliency now more than ever before. This is a push-pull, if-then world, full of ambiguity. Success will be found only in how we respond to our stressors. Strong and rapid resilience will be as the phoenix rising from the fire. It's never too late to become more resilient. Being resilient is not only a personality trait, it is a dynamic learning process. The first act we can take in learning resilience is to take a perspective on things. In moments of stress, it might be useful to place your individual situation into a bigger context or apply it to the bigger picture and get a grasp of its true importance in the overall scheme of life, its seriousness or lack thereof. For example, one technique from positive psychology is to think of a recent challenge or crisis in your personal life. Imagine the place you currently exist and slowly zoom out of it. Now think about your problem again. How big is it really? What does it look like from a much grander perspective? Is it still important? It is not simple to change our thoughts, but it is often a key first step. Sometimes we need to zoom out in order to recognize that in the larger scheme of things, maybe we're still okay. Maybe we even learned something from an uncomfortable experience and depended on the support of others. Now, keep in mind, zooming out is not a cure all. Another way we may build resilience is to actually find meaning and purpose in our life or career. This is my favorite. Meaning in one's environment is an important aspect of resilience. In Man's Search for Meaning, psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl said, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of his human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's way." Psychologists have found repeatedly that people with a strong sense of purpose experience more resilience. They have a stronger sense of well being and an even better cognitive functioning. Purpose in life fosters resilience in part by protecting the brain against the negative effects of stress. According to Patricia Doyle, a neuropsychologist with the Alzheimer's Disease Center, purpose somehow gives your brain resilience. It makes your brain stronger and more resistant to the effects of diseases like Alzheimer's. Other scientific studies support that having a strong purpose predicts health and longevity. Recent research suggests that finding meaning in life's experiences, especially when facing challenges, is a key mechanism of resilience. Overall, people who are resilient usually exhibit a positive attitude that guides them through obstacles. They shift the label of failure or something negative to something helpful instead. They apply a fail forward approach and generally see problems as potential or opportunities for learning or gain, or in my case, I see them as lessons to profit from, either professionally or personally. I expect to fail sometimes. If I'm not trying, I'm not getting, and with all risk comes the possibility of failure. It's a growth process, and like a plant, if we're not growing, we're dying. As Thomas Edison said, "I have not failed. I have just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Resiliency is the phoenix rising from the fire. We rose again after the fall. Sticking with mythical beast symbolism, our next episode will address the concept of anti-fragility. Whereas resiliency is the phoenix, anti-fragility is the hydra, the many-headed serpent monster in Greek mythology that was slain by Hercules, and each head of which, when cut off, was replaced by two others. Now that's resilience with an added boost of improvement. I will add some effective tools to the SuccessKast website to assist you if you wish to continue this exploration and have a desire to build the mental resilience and positive mindset a successful life and career demands. Until next time, stay safe, stay well, and I hope you will join us in future episodes to stay motivated, educated, possibly entertained, but very much informed.